Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Sunday Night Breakdown. Daniel Ratledge and Dave Forrester with you once again to go back through all the action in the British Basketball League this week. Dave, let's start on Wednesday in the Euro Cup. Buducnost VOLI Podgorica 78, London.
Mostly.
Hey? Yeah, I know. London Lions 68. Well, rather than talk through the first half, I'm going to quote Ryan Schmidt from his halftime interview when he was asked to sum up the first half, and he went, "It was terrible." It was terrible.
Wasn't that good?
Mm,
Mitigating factors. It's a cup. They won the cup final on
yeah,
Sunday.
yeah.
Don't care about the travel or anything like that. They're used to that. They win the cup final on Sunday. Historically, you win the cup final, you're ready for a punch in the nose of somebody.
Mm, mm,
And that happened to be the first game. But I was bored.
mm.
I'm not being funny. And I watch a hell of a lot of basketball. And to do that, you have to have a latent enthusiasm for the game at some point.
Yeah.
And this game bored me. Everything about it, the environment, there was 200 fans up at the top of the rafters, but
Yeah.
basically they didn't seem to be bothered. London's team just kind of was just out there. Luke Nelson looked like the one of the aliens from Space Jam. He'd come and pinched his talent. He was throwing the ball away. Um, yeah, the Buducnost team, they weren't very good. Dear
Mm,
me.
yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it was
Coming off the back of a 30-point win in a regular league game, mate.
well, it
Maybe
was
they've been out
yeah,
celebrating.
maybe, but it was like it was your archetype or 0-0 draw on a
Yeah.
Tuesday at Grimsby, wasn't it? It was just awful. I mean, it really turned me off the whole 7 days Euro Cup stuff. It's nice to know you've got the dog days in the Euro Cup, just like you have
Yeah,
the dog
yeah,
days
yeah, yeah.
everywhere else.
Well, they've got
Um,
one more week and then they get 3 weeks off.
yeah,
So,
well, I mean, they did. I mean, Decker, as ever, got his numbers and made some plays and at least tried to kind of bring them into it. Soko was back. He playing Euro Cup for a little bit. Hurban was back, but um, they were just dead. It was just
yeah.
dead. It was disinteresting.
So let's just leave it
Isn't very
there, I
good for a
think. Yeah,
podcast, is
yeah,
it?
yeah. Let's leave it there. There was a three on the buzzer of half time, which was the first made three of the first half, which doesn't happen very
Yeah.
often. 0 of 6 versus 1 of 6.
They
Buducnost
were
had,
getting everyone was getting open shots. It was
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah, missing them.
there's some great defensive games that you've watched. That was not
That
one.
wasn't one, yeah. 16 points off 12 turnovers in the first half. Decker had 14 of London's points. They were 37, 26 down at halftime. Second half wasn't much better, but London never really got close enough. So Eric Green with 16 points, Trey Bell Haynes 14 points and 10 assists, and Cameron Reynolds with 11. Decker 10 of 18 shooting for 27 points and 8 rebounds. Soko 11. They were 5 of 21 overall from 3-point range.
It was interesting to see, just on that though, again, you're moving towards European team and BBL team because again, um, there's no Ward Hibbett in this game, there's no Kamagum in this game. Whoever else was on the end of the bench didn't play. I'm not sure if Salawade played much at all. Maybe certainly, and there was every reason to insert them. They might have played in the fourth quarter when I was bored, so I forget if they didn't. I got there, but there's every reason to insert them earlier. He gave those guys every chance. He gave the other guys every chance to kind of show up, and really not many of them did. But then again, there's very little jeopardy in the game. They're looking at it and thinking we're probably not going to get to fourth or fifth. We're almost certainly not going to finish ninth or 10th.
Mm.
And so who finishes sixth, seventh, or eighth? Who finishes first, second, or third in the other group? Well,
Yeah, you
no,
don't
that's
know.
probably not in their hands either.
No,
So
no.
so there's no real jeopardy to it. It was just a long way to go
Mm.
for that.
So let's move to somewhere that wasn't such a long way to go, certainly for you to go. On Friday night, Newcastle
Yeah,
Eagles
we won one.
84, Sheffield Sharks 70. Um, I watched this game back, obviously, and really there was not really much in this in the ways of runs or dominance or people getting on top or anything for the first 3 quarters. So I almost want to go to the fourth quarter, Dave, but I'll give you a free runway to have anything you
Um,
want after out the first
Not
half
really,
hour.
because you're kind of right. There wasn't much. Obviously, Newcastle have lost Donovan Johnson, which is pretty certain in addition by subtraction. Um, Sheffield again, Ramsey and Flowers, and looking to see whether that is subtraction by addition. Certainly in relation to Flowers, the jury's out. I think Ramsey's proved to be pretty solid. The game itself, Newcastle started off turning the ball over for fun, and I think three-quarters of Sheffield's first 12 points were in transition off turnovers. But then Newcastle didn't play last week, so you give them a little bit of a mulligan on that. They were coming off like 2 weeks off, so a little bit of rhythm out of speed. Basically got carried by Hamlet and Kyle Johnson in the first half, who had 30 points out of their 40. Justin Gordon never got going early, and basically French and Cook and Defoe and Delpeche played each other to a standstill, but nobody scored. So that was probably more important for Newcastle than it was for Sheffield, because you've got to neutralise Sheffield's big guys, and they did a decent job with that, albeit they did get into a bit of foul trouble. In the third quarter, again, back and forwards, the game was kind of being played at, I don't know what Newcastle's pace is, actually, to be honest. I know what Sheffield's pace is, but I'm not sure where Newcastle are in their gestation, but it was definitely being played at more of a Sheffield tempo. And Kipper Nichols was making a lot of plays. And to be fair, Kipper Nichols was a standout player of the game through three quarters. Kipper Nichols. And then in the fourth quarter, Newcastle found, just got the fourth quarter, Newcastle found a lineup. And it's a game's all about lineups. It's not about, it's all about that. Newcastle found a lineup which worked.
Which didn't include Hamlet, which was odd.
Well, it didn't. Well, the thing was, Hamlet was great in the first half. He had 19 or 15 or 19 points in the first half, something like that.
Oh, the one bit I did miss is he missed a free throw.
He missed, that's right. I think that was 49 or 50, wasn't it? I think it was number 50 that he missed. I think he made 49 in a row. So obviously having missed that one, that's probably why the refs at Cheshire and I decided not to give him any. Didn't want to miss another one. Anyway, so he missed the free throw, but basically in the third quarter, Mark took him out actually halfway through the third quarter because he was a bit shaky. And he made a couple of bad decisions, threw a bad lob up to French, got caught defensively once or twice and took him out. Then he brought him back in at the end of the third quarter. Hamlet made an awful play at the end of the third quarter where with 24 seconds on the shot clock, he went and attacked the rim with his 1 second differential. Flowers blocked it. And Gordon and Kyle Johnson weren't particularly impressed with that. And at that point, that was it. He was done. So at that point, that was his last play of the game. But to be fair, it's all about finding a defensive and offensive rhythm. And Newcastle found a defensive rhythm with the lineup that they had, and that was basically the game, because Sheffield went, by my I watched the fourth quarter back. I didn't watch the rest of the game back. I couldn't face it. Watched the fourth quarter back, and outside of the two layups they made in the first minute and 10 seconds, they didn't make a field goal other than a kind of a run-out transition basket for 8 minutes.
Yeah.
And they just died a death.
They did. So Sharks were up 60-64 early in the fourth quarter after those two scores that you just talked about. And then Mockford got Newcastle going. They scored 12 points without reply to 72-64. And then Mockford just made a few more shots to make sure it was comfortable on the way home.
Yeah, they got into a defensive rhythm. And, in that time, I think Defoe took at least 2 charges. Sheffield mixed and matched with their subs. They just, in my impression was, they just don't know who they are at the moment. Didn't know where the ball was going. He didn't know whose kind of turn it was. Flowers came in, Flowers came out. Glasgow came in, Glasgow came out. Routinho hardly touched the ball all night. He had 2 points. You don't remember it having an impact on the game. Nelson had the ball in his hands, but he was, at times, but then he missed a couple of layups and just. And turned the ball over, and Cohen got a steal, and the other end, and helped them. As I say, the advantage that they had with the lineup was that because Sheffield were mixing and matching all the time, they were able to put Mockford onto Routinho, who wasn't really impacting the game much and touching the ball, so they wouldn't really be able to go at Mockford offensively, and they'd given up throwing the ball inside at this point. So Coke wasn't touching the ball, and and at times, Flowers comes on, he plays a bit, he's a 5, but again at that point he's not playing inside either. So they became a little bit predictable, and Newcastle, without having the usual suspects on the court to make the mistakes. And to be fair, the one thing I think Mockford's had a lot of stick, but the one thing about Mockford is that he does stick to the scouting report. He's athletic. He's a bit challenged, But he does stick the scouting report defensively, and with him on the wing and, and Cohen kind of buzzing around and Darius in the middle just anchoring everything, they basically, Sheffield, as I say, Sheffield kind of had the air going out of the balloon, and eventually, Ben Mockford, did what he does, or did what he's meant to do, and knocked down, a couple of shots in transition at that end, like he's done for GB, and that was the game, really. It's a bit of a disconcerting game because it wasn't a 14-point game.
No. Well,
No,
as I say,
but that's how it ended
to
up.
that point, I think the biggest lead was 6 or something. Maybe there was another one
It was
somewhere.
just like, you're looking for who's going to grab this
Yeah.
Sheffield team by the throat. Who is it? And it's probably too early to be Ramsey because he's only been in 3 games. So who else? Well, it was Kipper Nicholas for 3 quarters, but the fourth quarter he couldn't get going. Gordon got going a little bit in the second half because he was awful in the first half. He was no impact, so that impacted things as well. So Sheffield just think they've almost jumped to where Newcastle were with they got 8 guys. They probably only need 7. But you've got to work out which 7 they are.
Yeah.
And Newcastle benefited because they played 5 in the fourth quarter and got a rhythm going.
Yeah.
Johnson
with 24 points, Hamlet 19, 6 of 7 from the free throw line. Mockford, all 13 of his points coming in the fourth quarter. Nelson, go on.
No, just Johnson obviously had 50. Johnson's very good. He is a scorer, he's a professional scorer. You can see that. But when he gets shut down, then in the fourth quarter, it was who's going to carry them? Well, it was you got to get to 80 to win basically, and it was Gordon who came up with 10 points in the second half. Mockford came up with 13. That kind of carried them over the line, and there was no one from Sheffield who were kind of the tertiary scorers outside of Nichols, and Nelson. And Nelson got his points very quietly. He didn't get his points in a way that really kind of impacted the game. When they needed him, they needed him to score. There was no one there to score.
Nelson led the way with 20 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists. Nichols 19. Ramsey had 11. So let's go to the game I was at, the Sky Sports game. Manchester Giants 73, Caledonia Gladiators 91. Giants were doing this the wrong way round here. They were knocking down shots. They were getting to the rim. The offense was flying. Gladiators couldn't score. And after 8 minutes, instead of being 15 points down, Giants were 18 points up, 30 points to 12.
Yeah, you know the problem, don't you? I mean, the delivery times got screwed up. Instead of getting there at half time, the Red Bull arrived 20 minutes before the game. And they just came out and battered them early. Ran the ball down their throats, made shots, played aggressively. And we're kind of helped by the fact that Jimenez isn't a good matchup for that team for Manchester. That it is very Manchester. I remember looking also in that Ali Hodzic and thinking, my God, I bet you don't see many teams who are playing like this in Bosnia.
Yeah.
This is very different to Bosnia. You're winning into Fletcher, Williams, Robertson, and Green and William Lee. But it's the tortoise in the hare, isn't it?
Yeah. It was exactly that.
And what happened was Manchester. Right, I've got competing theories on Manchester, but one which I'm pretty certain of is that as Nick Lewis goes, they go. And to be fair, it was often the same at Sheffield as well when he was at Sheffield. Because he's coming off the bench, you've got Robertson, Lewis, and Callum Jones in this game, and Nathan Robinson wasn't playing. So really, to get something off the bench, it's probably going to be Nick Lewis. Callum's going to give you the smart stuff, and Robertson's going to give you the minutes, banging away. But Nick's had to make some shots, and he didn't really in this game. He was pretty, Vince pulled him after about 3 or 4 minutes of the second quarter. And it's tough because they aren't blessed with the number of bodies and the number of players whereby if 2 guys have an off night, then they're going to be able to score 100. They're not. But then again, they only kind of need to score 90 or 95 to have a shot of winning because the defense isn't great. So Taj Green struggled a bit in this game. He was the one guy that didn't get going early, and gradually, Caledonia, who seemed to have had a kind of I don't know, they seemed to be recentered, to use a phrase. It just seemed that way. It just seemed to me that they were all a little bit more disciplined in the way that they were playing. And obviously Bailey's a big point of that, but they're playing around everybody else as well. And they've found a guy in Durham who's obviously a lot better than Burns, who's a better fit for them. This league has had so many kind of longish 6'4" lefties over the years. He's just another one. And they gradually, strangled Manchester.
Chipped away, and then suddenly Manchester's offense disappeared, and in 6 minutes they scored once, and Caledonia had Tape inside, Bunyan in the corner with back-to-back threes. Onwas doing what Onwas does, and a 23-2 run to lead 40 points to 48.
Yeah, and it was a sustainable run though, because they were doing it off good shots, they were doing it off ball movement, and it actually helped them, because if you remember the last time they were in Manchester, they got happy.
Yeah, they did.
They scored like 50 points in like 15 minutes or something like that. And then you're in the scoring race. Well, they couldn't be in the scoring race with Manchester, because they were down 20 in this game. If you're going to stay in the scoring race, you're going to end up down 50. So they had to buckle down and play some defense, and they had to actually focus down to it. And they did that. And, Tape continues to impress. As a rookie, he's getting more impactful in relation to his finishing and his kind of more certain in relation to his play every game. He's really fulfilling the role that's wanted. Ali Hodzic kind of buttons up that rotation for them as well, with a guy who's really not going to make many mistakes. And then it comes down to, how disciplined are the guards, and can they knock down shots? And they did. And, ultimately, the game kind of tapered away. It was, it wasn't a 55-point blowout in the final, but it wasn't that far short to commentate on in the fourth.
No, they didn't really make any inroads, Manchester. And then I thought actually Ali Hodzic, once he picked up his fourth foul, played the best basketball of the game after that.
You can tell you're a vet, can't you? When you've been there 2 games, and you're waving the coach off after 4 fouls. No, keep me in. And the coach is listening to you. I can think of 1,000 new Americans that Gareth would not have listened to. So that's a big thing as well. They've got the trust of that. But no, I mean, the Caledonia they've been kind of buzzing around 500 all year, as have Manchester. But Caledonia slightly different way. And you're wanting to see if they can make that kind of leap, that consistency leap. They remain, systematic. Gareth kind of got his team back together. So, I think what it's going to come down to with them is, how well teams guard them, and how disciplined, and how well the guards make shots. If the guards make shots, and those, I'm not, it's kind of a bit of a thing with Johnny Bunyan, but those threes Johnny Bunyan makes are really important shots.
Yeah.
And it's not just because it's Johnny Bunyan making them; it's because they're coming off ball movement. They're coming when they've got the extra man. They're good shots. They're dispiriting shots because you shouldn't be allowing him to get those shots. And it's basically evidence of them beating it. It's not like, Fletch dribbling past 2 people and picking a behind the back pass out of his backside and throwing it to somebody in the corner. It's all properly. It's all properly obtained, if I can put it that way. It's the way Gareth wants them to play. So knocking those shots down and the rhythm of those shots really makes difference. And Manchester kind of just ran out of gas after that.
They had another 13-3 run to make it 64-85, and that was that. So Dirk Williams with 19 points, although 1 of 8 from 3-point range. Fletcher with 13 points and 1 assist. How many times has Fletcher had 1 assist in a game?
You're going to tell me, when was the last?
Now you see, I got out. Kieran asked the question on air, and I gave the answer to our director. But by that point, they were on the.
You see, I don't listen to you because I'm watching the game. I don't listen because I've got a fast forward and it was cut off. So have you not looked up since? No.
Yeah, I have. Yeah. I had the answer there and then, but it was just didn't make it on air. It was the 4th time in his career that he's had 1 assist. He's never had 0 in a game that he's actually come on court.
I think his assist was the first play of the game as well. I might have to go back and check that, but I think it was actually the first play of the game. I think he threw it to somebody in the corner for a 3. Just remarkable. But just on that though, that's the way that Manchester score the ball a lot, with him controlling and throwing the ball to people in rhythm to score, right? The fact that they weren't able to do that is because of Caledonia. It's not because he's having it's not necessarily because he's having an off game. I'm not looking for the guys. He still is. It's because of the way that they're guarding. I think the way that they're not cheating, the way that they're defending the pick and pop, for instance, and we're going to talk about that in the next game as well. That type of thing. They defend it better. So they took the assists away. It's not necessarily on him. It's on the preparation of Caledonia. So I give them credit for that.
Lee with 13 and Green 10 points and 17 rebounds. Tape was 8 of 9 shooting for 19 and 9 rebounds. Bailey had 18. Durham, not his most efficient 15 ever, but signs there of a really good player, I think. And Ali Hodgic was efficient, 5 of 7 for 12 points.
It's becoming a bit of a pattern, though, that, big guys are having career games against Manchester. There's a rhythm of the season. As the season goes on, and I was at Newcastle when French had 19 and 18. They're not, they play so fast, I suppose, that the numbers are out there to get, but also they're not an overpowering team defensively on the rebounding. They do try and block. Lee tries to block shots, Green tries to block shots, so there's not a tremendous amount of boxing out goes on. Roberson's probably a better offensive rebounder than defensive rebounder, but they got nothing out of Lewis, and they need that boost out to get that 15-20 points to get themselves up to the 90s.
And down by 18 to win by 18 is the biggest win for a team that was down by 18 or more since March 16th, 2018, where the Eagles trailed 23-41 and ended up beating Bristol 93-70.
18 March 18. That would have been one of I think that was the game that Fab came on and played defense. I have to watch it back, but there was a game against Bristol that year where we were awful, and then he came on and I looked at the end of the game, he was plus 32 in about 12 minutes. I think that might have been that game.
Yeah, it could have been.
Because I think there's a few tweets about it as well. I'll check that out, but I think it was.
There was another game which involved Manchester. I think it was also against Newcastle, where they'd been 18 down, but they only won by 17. Newcastle only won by 17, or whoever beat them only won by 17. So let's go to Plymouth City Patriots 93, Bristol Flyers 108. And again, watching this one back, it seemed that Bristol scored every time they got the ball in the beginning. There were no stops at all for Plymouth. Hassan matched them for a few minutes, but then when Plymouth didn't score, Bristol went 14-0 and were 9-27 up. And to be honest with you, that was pretty much that.
Yeah, interestingly, PJ changed his starting lineup today quite substantially from the lineup that played in this game. They just scored at will. Let's be blunt, they scored at the rim with it being Dalpesh. King got every rhythm shot that he wanted. Anytime there's any form of mismatch, they throw the ball to Bale and he takes 3 dribbles in different directions and flicks it over his shoulder and it always goes in. Which is a skill, it's a very unconventional skill, but he's an efficient player, and they know how to get him the basketball. Miller pulled the strings, and obviously there's a few of those guys who were there last year who remember what happened last year and the difficulties they had in that Plymouth Bristol game, and there's a bit of rivalry going on as well. So they just came out, they at this point in time they're playing like they're having fun. Certainly offensively, they have kind of a synergy offensively in relation to the kick, the balls, the ball movement, the penetration, and it looks at times. Early season, it was a little bit kind of your turn, my turn, but they've got now to the point whereby their actions are more smooth, which what I mean is they're getting paint touches, they're getting the ball in the paint, and then they're kicking it out, and then they're getting looks on the return. If they're not kicking out, they're throwing a lob up to Dalpesh, and the advantage of getting some action off the screen and roll and getting the ball in the paint, it means that you can get shots and those guys are basically off the dribble. It's Watson, Gale, Samuels, Miller, and King, but it's allowing them to get shots from Mahan and for Ollison, and then, as I say, Bell's Swiss Army knife does a bit of everything, and your 2 centers are just bludgeoning people. Which is what happened. Plymouth are obviously replaced 2 of their more experienced imports with 2 guys who are less experienced, and defensively there are holes everywhere. And that's kind of understandable because they're going against a team that's played together for half a season, and they've got, if you to kind of throw one new player into a defensive setup is not easy. To throw two in at the same time is very difficult, and that's why I think PJ had been kind of careful with Gadsden and Johnson.
Daniels.
Daniels, sorry.
Juwan Daniels.
Juwan Daniels, sorry, my fault. Yeah, too many Johnsons in this league. He'd be careful with their minutes a little bit to stagger them because they're both guys who can score. But Plymouth started off confident and never changed. I'm sorry, Bristol started off confident and never changed. Hassan really struggled a little bit against Del Pesce's size. Dusha has gone back to being the guy who doesn't really shoot much anymore. So his scoring numbers have kind of created because he's got the rest of the team to worry about. And I think I remember the refs getting a bit picky in the third quarter when I was kind of buzzing through it. But apart from that, there wasn't really much jeopardy in the game.
A few runs. I've got the same thing here. A few mini runs, but nothing in terms of jeopardy. They kind of traded scores after that first.
The only thing that was in jeopardy was actually another one for the 95-point rule because I thought they might get there near the end.
Yeah, they nearly did.
When they've got to 93, and I was worried because I'm on the side of on the side of the rule. If you give up 95, if you give up 95 away, you should lose. I'm happy when they got to 93, but no more. But no, that was really it.
Yeah, Hassan 14 of 16 for 32 points. Hawthorne 12, Daniels 11. King with 30 points. That's the third time he scored 30 points. And he joins Gentry Thomas as the only two players in Bristol history to score 30 points 3 times.
See, I don't remember Hassan making all those shots, but bless him, that's Rashad Hassan, I don't remember him making all those shots. Certainly early on in the game he struggled. I did say that earlier. But Rashad, I apologise to you for the rest of the 3 quarters if you just dropped 32. No, King is
the other thing about King's stat, 10 of 13 to get 30
he's effortless.
Points.
He's effortless. And his effortlessness comes with his confidence, I think. And it's different, it's a different the thing I like about him is his confidence doesn't ever seem to kind of traipse into arrogance. He just seems to play the right way. And you've got to find a way of guarding them. But he's a cherry on the icing, he's that's great for them. But it's there's a lot of engines that make that team work. And he got the player of the month, so he gets a little bit of the glory. But there's a lot of other things that go on in that team within the chemistry between the players to make it work the way it actually is now working. And they're a hell of a lot better now than they were in November, even when they were we were watching the games then, and you could see that.
Well, at that point in time, the numbers looked like it didn't make sense how they'd won all the games because the numbers didn't equate to winning all those games. Whereas now, the numbers equate to them winning games, and they look like a team that is going to win almost all their games.
Well, they believe they're going to, don't they?
Yeah.
So the team's going to have to think carefully about how do you play Bristol.
Bell with 18 points. They had 6 guys in double figures, shot 59% from the floor and 14 of 26 from 3-point range.
That's just, you can't win. I mean, that's what about Plymouth's defense. 59% from the floor, 53% from the 3-point line. There's no chance.
So Leicester Riders 99, Surrey Scorchers 77. Luke Basumbro and Teo Gundengbi were back in the lineup. So too was Andrew Lawrence after his load management last week that you were enthralled with.
Load management for one game last week, and then they've got 2 games this week, and he plays most of them apart from the last 3 minutes of overtime in the second one. That's not well. Okay.
A bit of a slow start. This Leicester trying to force feed it. Menzies still in the starting lineup after obviously last week in the cup final.
Yeah, I'm not sure how long that'll continue, but we'll see.
They kind of force fed him a little early on, and neither team really got things going. But eventually, the Riders' wings started getting the scoreboard ticking over.
Yeah, this game kind of depressed me a little bit from Surrey's perspective. I don't think they felt that they ever had a shot of winning it. I don't think they played as if they believed they had a shot of winning it. I don't really think they did have a shot of winning it, but I think they had a shot of being a bit more competitive than they were.
Yeah.
The reality was that Leicester's...
Well, they were there a couple of weeks ago, and they were a lot more competitive than this.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I was still on Surrey, actually, and rather than talking it through the game, because the game was basically that, you know, a couple of runs. Surrey made a couple of runs once at the end. Beginning of the second quarter, beginning of the end of the third quarter, I think they made some runs to get it back to within 12 or 15 or something. But it was never, you know, never a situation where you felt anything significant was going to happen in that way. But what frustrated me about Surrey was, right, they're 2-18 or something. They won 2 games all year, or 3 games. They won the trophy game. They've had, those players have been there long enough now. Obviously Taylor doesn't count and Bazumbra's just come back, but at the end of the day, you're either winning or you're losing, and you've got a winning mentality or you haven't. There was a moment in the second quarter of this game, I think, whereby the biggest guy in the court is Darian Nelson-Henry, probably one of the most decorated players in the court. He's all BBL first team. He's won the triple. You know, he's not the youngest, not the he's not old, but you know, he's not the flightiest individual on the court. He went and dived on the floor for a ball, and 4 Surrey guys stood and watched him. Ball that absolutely no right of getting.
No right, yeah.
No right to get it all, right? Now, if you are 2-18, you have to play with desperation. You have to be desperate. You have to be fed up with losing. Every loose ball has to be yours. That was a 75-25 ball in Surrey's favour. Not one of those guys went and got it. Not one of them. I thought they were, and I kind of accept Shakim Johnson out of this, because I think he's really a guy who plays hard and does what the coach asks him to do and does his role. I still don't know who their alpha is. You know, and this is a problem, because if everybody's for saying, oh, Andrew Lawrence is our best player, well, Andrew Lawrence, your best player can't be out for load management, you know? Not when you're losing. Your best player's got to be the one who carries you over, right? So Ryan Martin's tried to be it, I think. I think he's seen that there's been a gap there in the group, and he's tried to kind of step up and take some responsibility. But in reality, it's hard to do that when you're a 4. And he's a spotty shooter, and at times that's led to him kind of overreaching in relation to some of the decisions he's made. But I give him credit for trying. The rest of them, who, you know, Quincy Taylor's been and gone, Jalen Ray has just come back. I looked at the lineup and I'm thinking, you know, Dobbs has basically not played for 2 months. And I'm just looking at the lineup and thinking, you know, this is a team that's won 2 games all season. And apart from the crackerjack guy who picked a fight in his first game at Plymouth, they haven't cut anybody. Yeah. And, you know, it's all been, oh, we'll get the next guy back, or look how good we'll be when this guy's back and this team's back, and all of this stuff. And it's like, you know, somewhere along the line, if you're not helping the team win, you're helping them lose, and some decisions have to be made. And you know, you could argue this is kind of the opposite of Newcastle, who've made multiple decisions. You know, that these guys aren't, you know, this guy's not helping us, we're gonna shift them out, whatever. But at least what that does is it demonstrates a degree of organizational upset at losing. You know, it demonstrates a degree of consequences, right? I don't see what consequences are at Surrey at the moment for people. And you know, it's difficult because it's Lloyd's first year. So obviously you kind of write off the last 3 years because Lloyd wasn't there. So it's a new coach. So we all know what the BBL's like year after year. You have different players. You know, different. Every season is different. You know, Bristol could pick the wrong team and they could be 5 and 6 teams. They've got the right team. They're playing great, 16 and 5. You know, next year they might struggle to keep any of those guys, and the whole thing changes again. But what frustrates me about them is that the lack of that urgency. You know, Quincy Taylor's gone home, which obviously they knew it was going to happen. That's fine. But, you know, Quincy Taylor was the guy I was calling out last week for not touching the basketball in the last 7 minutes of the game that they should have won.
Yeah.
Or the game that they was that with Leicester as well? It was somewhere. The game that
Manchester,
had a chance to win.
wasn't it?
Manchester, yeah. Game that they had a chance to win. And now it becomes a little bit more understandable. You know, the guy's already on the plane. He knows he's going home. You know, mentally, physically you're there, you're doing your best, but mentally, it's not the same. You know, one of the, we made a massive mistake, I think, in the game about 5 years ago in the Nimley Page year. We let them all go home for Christmas, which meant the game before Christmas we played. And half of them run the plane. And so mentally it changes things. And I thought it was as routine can be, and you can't be losing. And they've got talent on that team, but you saw the way that London defended Leicester in the final, right? They gave up, I think, 12 3-point attempts. Leicester didn't make a 3 in the first half. Right there, that was last week, right? There's your template. That's how we got to defend this. That's how we're going to defend it. We're going to keep them off the 3-point line in every which way we can, right? And part of it, the definition of a desperation of a team, kind of the exemplification of it, is how you defend the 3-point line. Because it's easy to go out there and be in front of somebody, put your hand up and say, "Nice shot." You can do that, and against good teams. Leicester are, plus 40% 3-point shooting team, historically great shooting team last year, probably not quite the same this year, but not far off. In that gym, they stood up and they did that. They gave them open 3 after open 3, and they weren't necessarily open insofar as there was nobody there. They were open in that they weren't deterring them from shooting it. And London had been deterring them from shooting it, and that to me was just. I'm afraid, incredibly, they looked like a team bereft of on-court leadership, and it's they'd lost the game. No one expects them to go to London to Leicester and win. They haven't done it for the best part of over a decade as a club and as a team. They're miles behind where Leicester are, with Leicester's continuity and Leicester's talent in shooting. So it's not about the fact that they won or they lost. It was how it happened. That really, really kind of frustrated me. Leicester's perspective, I mean, Leicester were okay, but basically it was when they had the lineup of Mackenzie, Loving, Whelan, Jackson, and Nelson Henry just killed Surrey. Everything else played about even, but that lineup just killed them. That's, again, it's a little bit like Newcastle starting that last 5 lineup. You find that, right, guys, you're riding for 6 or 7 minutes, you put a 20-point run on, the game is done. At that point. Love's interesting. I think he is going to help. I think he might be the best of the 4. That the 4 point guards that they've tried to find to replace Crandall. Certainly, he looks like a guy who can shoot, and his numbers suggest he can shoot, which is the first thing, which is really important for that team, that shooting point guard. But secondly, he looks like a guy who's comfortable with the ball in his hands and decision making, both scoring and getting others involved. The only knock on him is whether he's a finisher at the rim, because we didn't see that in the cup final, but it was his first game, so you can't judge him. So you have to wait to see what happens with that. I think at some point he will make his way at the starting lineup, and I think they'll bring Mackenzie off the bench as being kind of the 6th man instigator, just energy guy. I think they're going to need that to beat London, or even potentially to match up with someone like Watson Gale when they play against Bristol. But no, I think he's probably. I don't think the Bandu injury might not be the worst thing that ever happened to them, because I think we've seen more in him, which fits Riders, than I did in any of the other 3. This shows how hard recruitment is. You got to keep changing.
It is, yeah. Loving with 21 points. Jackson 9 of 13 for 20 points and 9 rebounds. Mackenzie 16.6 assists. The other thing to your point about effort and hustle and all of that, 46-28 on the glass. Leicester won. Rebounding.
Desperation. You know what I mean? You're losing. You're losing.
Wang 13, Ray 13, Jack Domney 11. So let's go to Saturday night. Again, this is another one where there's a lot to get through on this one. There was no more than 2 shots between the sides for the entire 45 minutes. Anything you want to pick up on before we go to the end, Dave?
What, the Surrey Manchester?
Yeah. Sorry, did I not even give the score? Surrey Scorchers 85, Manchester Giants 86 after overtime.
Anything I want to pick up on? Will you please start allowing people to block shots?
You've ticked the box that I've got here when I said anything you want to pick up, Dave.
If Paddy Wang is not allowed to throw that, not to make that absolutely picture perfect block on William Lee, And if before that, actually, William Lee got called for one on Bazumbra, which we didn't quite get the right angle on, but it looked pretty
I've
horrible.
got both of them, yeah. Let's see if you can go through all of the calls that I've got down here that I'm expecting you to go
Oh
through.
man, well, this is why
They're all in these are just the ones in the third quarter, by the
yeah,
way.
the
But
third quarter got out of control after a
yeah,
while. I thought it just got nuts. But those were the two that stuck in my mind because they followed a pattern. And the pattern was let guys make plays. You know, the play that Wang made on Lee was an outstanding athletic play. It wasn't there wasn't any touch on the wrist, there wasn't any touch on the body. He was vertical, he stepped to put the ball because it was perfect. You know, and that's the type of call, I'm afraid, which makes you just think, no, this game is too athletic for these refs. You've got to be able to see that. You've got to be able to allow that to happen. You've got to understand that there is a degree of physicality in the game. And that was as clean can be. And that's what loses refs' respect with players when you make calls like that. Now, you tell me what the other ones were, and I might remember them.
Okay. Lawrence's defensive foul on Dirk Williams.
Oh, yes. Yeah, on the sideline.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, yes. He came, yeah.
Sort of slide onto him and
bang. Wallop, yeah, that's right. Who was that?
Legend on the bench getting a technical.
Oh yes, of course. That I'm going to move on to technicals later, but yeah, I thought that was awful. And I'm sorry I've forgotten that because I should have remembered it. I don't write this stuff down. Next time I'm going to write this stuff down. Let you do it. May provide us with a degree of appearing competent in doing this thing. No, the Robertson thing was whether it was a foul or not, and he was saying I was straight up. He turned his body a little bit. It was a 50-50 call, whatever, right? But sitting on the bench when nobody else in the gym is looking at Legend Robertson. Oh, nobody else in the gym cares, right? And putting your hands up to say I was straight up. For that to be worthy of a technical, again, I'm afraid that's a referee who's more interested in how he's perceived than how the game is being played. Right? That is just nobody cares. You know, if he wants to run around, whip his shirt around and start throwing things on the court, fine. But he's sitting there with his hands and I'm sorry. Unless he said something, which there didn't appear to be any lip reading that I could see on the bench, then no, just rubbish. Just get on with it and forget about the fact, administer the game and start to learn to ignore stuff.
The only other one I've got was actually in the fourth quarter, which was kind of touched upon on Twitter that we both got tagged into. There was an 8-second violation with 4.5 minutes to go that they missed. And it was one where Lawrence was just walking it up and then he suddenly realized the clock and he ran across the line, but he wasn't over the line.
See, I saw that. And I slowed it down. I did what us geeks do, right? And I slowed it down. And I agree with you. I think his left foot was over the line. At the time it got to 15. Now my question is, and this is what I don't know about, so I've just given the refs a telling off and whatever. But I'm also going to admit the stuff I don't know. What constitutes possession in the front court?
The ball has to be.
Is it 1 foot? Is it
no?
The ball?
You have to. It has to be over. It has to be over. Yeah. So
the ball has to either bounce over. Bounce in court. Or it has to be in the possession.
Well, when you say bouncing court, that would be in a dribble. It can't be like if somebody had passed it. If it doesn't reach the hands before the 8-second violation, even if it's in the front court, it's got to be established. It's established in the front court.
So it's established possession. Now, the question I'm going to ask about that, and I don't know the answer, and I'm not sure you will, is that now to be a backcourt violation, you have to have all 3 points established in the front court, right?
Correct.
2 feet and the ball have to be in the front court. And when if one thing goes backwards, it's a backcourt violation, right? Do you have to have all 3 points established in the court for the 8-second call or not?
You have to be over the line. So you have
1 foot or 2 feet.
It's both. Both
feet.
Yeah. I mean, I'd stand to be corrected if I'm wrong on that.
As do I. In that case, that wasn't the 8-second call because I went back. I did actually watch it at the time and see it happening.
Same. It was one of them where I went, "That's an 8 seconds, isn't it?" And then went back and went, "Yeah, it is."
It's scary with still how synergetic again.
It is. So let's get to the end of the game. Minute 40 to go. Giants with an offensive rebound. Fletcher right down the middle of the lane, lays it in 71-73.
Oh yeah, and Shaquem Johnson's dunk on Legend was nice. Let's I don't know if you saw it.
That's in the overtime. You're jumping ahead. Yeah.
Okay,
right. Spoiler alert, there's a good dunk coming.
It was a good dunk coming.
I mean,
basically, Fletch kind of took over this game, and they kind of allowed him to. He got to his left hand on that play, and
Ray then misses a 3. They come and run the pick and roll with Fletcher and Green, and he got that sort of little hook to make it 71-75, 106 to go.
Now, what I'll say about this game, just before we get to the kind of the end of it, right? Fletcher had 1 assist against Caledonia. Green didn't make a basket off one of his plays, right? Surrey defended the 3-point line against Leicester in a pretty average way. Against Manchester, they were worse, right? The amount of pick and pop threes that Green got, or plays that Lee got, all off Fletcher. When you've got a guy like Robertson on the other side who you can cheat off a little bit, you say, go and throw the ball to him, make him make plays every time. The beat us, he might do. You've got to be careful because he's going to crash the board and get the rebounds if you haven't got a body on him. But their inability to disrupt the Fletcher Green situation in this game was why they lost this game. They should not have lost this game. This was a losing team, lost this game. Manchester played the night before. Manchester had 5. Dirk Williams played full 45 in this game. They played the night before. Now, I know Surrey played the night before as well, but Manchester played at a faster pace with fewer players, and they're more dependent on those guys to score. All right? So this game was there for Surrey to win, particularly in the fourth quarter. And the reason they didn't was because every time Fletcher threw the ball to Taj Green shot a 3. And even if Taj Green stopped, Taj Green does not shoot any threes off a dribble. He does not. He will not. You count all the threes he's made this year, he's probably dribbled the ball 3 times on all of them, right? And I was staring at the screen like, Fletcher's throwing it to you. What's your counter to make Green put the ball on the floor? Because he's beating you from the 3-point line. You can't just do that. It's that defense. Hope he missed.
Yeah.
He had 29 points in this game. He played great. He made great shots. But you allow him to make those shots. It's a tired team. They need that guy to make those shots. You need to make him work. You need to make him decisions. You need to make him dribble the basketball, spin, maybe commit a charging foul. He might dunk on you. So be it. You get 2 for a dunk. And I thought that kind of play you mentioned at the end triggered that memory of me because it was Fletcher to William Lee for a 15-foot jump shot. They didn't disrupt that the whole game, which I thought was why ultimately they lost the game. That said, they did come back into it.
They did, yeah. So Lee's 5th foul. Johnson goes 1 for 2 from the free throw line, 72-75, 59 seconds to go. Fletcher misses a 3. Wang misses a 3, but the long rebound came out to Lawrence in the corner, and then Johnson with the pick and roll with Ray rolls to the basket and scores 13.5 seconds to go, 74-75. They foul Dirk Williams, and he makes 1 of 2 from the free throw line. So it's 74-76. Timeout, but no advance of the ball. So they've got the ball on the baseline going the full length of the court.
I don't mind that.
It's one of those things because you can run the baseline as well if they put pressure on it. And actually, sometimes
Manchester's not in a pressure situation. No way in the world. Actually, Fletch did over pressure, and they got beat on it. He got beat on it. But actually,
that's kind of the hope, isn't it? That actually that they think, oh, we can go for a steal here or something.
Yeah, well, they tempted them in and they got beaten. They never quite recovered.
Yeah. So Ray attacks, a bit of a circus shot, nearly went in, but was tipped in by Johnson with a second to go.
Because Fletcher and Callum Jones had to switch, so Fletcher's been caught in front of the ball, which means that Callum had to pick up the ball, but Callum was kind of on his heels a little bit, and obviously Callum's aware because he's been around a long time that you're up 2, so you're not giving up a 3 to Ray.
Yeah,
you don't ever lose. You don't ever give up the 3 to lose, right?
Yeah,
you make them go. So they made him drive, but that meant that big guy, whoever it was at the green, had to come across to change the shot. There was no way Callum could get down in there in time to box out on the switch, to box out Shaq Johnson, who'd set the screen, or who was on the weak side, and he made a play, and he put the ball in, and overtime.
Yep, overtime. First minute of overtime is the Shaq Johnson dunk that you were talking about. Absolutely. If you haven't seen it, go find that dunk on.
I mean, he's playing hard. He really is playing hard. I give him a lot of credit. It's tough to do it in a team which is, kind of constantly vacillating around you. Hard.
And then Legend fouled out with 2:41 to go in overtime, so they were super small at that point. Manchester.
Yeah.
123 to go. Dirk with the drive, called for a charge. 83-83 the score. 1:12 to go. Wang with a drive, two-handed dunk, 85-83. And then come the other way, Dirk misses a runner. Ray misses, and then there's a loose loose ball collision between Dirk Williams and Pradeep Wang, and the foul's on Wang. So Dirk goes to the free throw.
Yeah, just at this point, right? I mean, in overtime, Surrey absolutely butchered this game. Right?
Yeah.
The last
We
minute
haven't
of
even
overtime,
got to the worst bit.
they haven't got to it. They absolutely butchered this game. I give credit to Manchester for winning it. Of course. But Manchester have got guys who've been there and done it. But you know what also happened is that before all this happened, Lawrence has sat down on 4 fouls. Maybe hurt, I don't know. A suggestion on Twitter was that he was hurt. But you know, for me, you know, we haven't won a game in however long, we're 2-8, 2-19. My leg better be falling off before I'm coming out of that game with 2 minutes to go in overtime. Which put Buzumbru in the game, who hasn't played for X amount of weeks and arguably isn't the point guard anyway. To play with a guy in Ray who he's probably never seen on the court before, apart from in pre-season.
Yeah.
Right? So, notwithstanding all of that, they get themselves up. And as you say, I think, you know, Wang committed a bad foul on Williams.
Yeah.
On the rebound. On the outlet pass. And Williams is dog tired. He's played every minute. He's made 4 field goals. Makes 1 out of 2.
1 out of 2, 85-84, 40.5 seconds to go. And then Buzumbru, under no pressure, walks it up the court and doesn't get it across the line inside 8 seconds, and they turn it over on an 8-second violation.
Well, did they? Or was that the one that they didn't call?
No, that was the one they called.
Yeah, well, the one before that was the one they didn't call.
Yeah.
Because the one before that was more egregious. Elliot on the sideline there waving his arms just like I would have been doing 25 years ago, you know, and I watched it, but I'm thinking, look, what, you know, there is nothing more for the referee to look at. There's literally nothing going on other than he's been dribbling the ball a while, wonder what the shot clock is, I better have a check. No, you can't blow that call. That's not a judgment call. That's not an issue as to, it could be, it might not be. That's not one I've got any sympathy for at all. And I'm glad the second ref got it right the next time.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you can't blow that first goal that last minute. Now, to be fair, the Manchester bench should be all over it.
Yeah, true.
Right? You know, albeit you don't want to get a technical at that point either. Given that Legend got one for sticking his hands in the air, I don't quite understand why Vince might want to be careful. But you see that even see Lloyd waving him along.
Yeah.
Lloyd waves him along, you know, so it's not the coach.
Yeah.
But it's because you've got your point guard who's meant to be your leader of the team who's wandered off with 3 minutes to go, you know, to load manage the last 3 minutes. You've got a guy who's not played point guard in the NBL, who's now hasn't played in the BBL for 6 weeks, who's now coming in and he's handling the basketball at the end. He doesn't get the ball over on 2 separate occasions, because his mind is so full of everything else that he's got to think about. Right? And so they butchered that. Then you've got, going down the other end, there is no plan on how to defend Fletch.
Yeah.
But Fletch basically just dribbles the ball at the top of the key, and he could have gone left, he could have gone right. He's got Luke Buzumbru in front of him. Luke Buzumbru is doing his best to stay in front of him. Fletch is just playing with him until he pulls up and makes a jump shot. Yeah,
so he basically ran it right down to the end of the shot clock and then knocked one down from the top of the key.
Yeah,
and they're ahead now, having had the ball with 40 seconds to go, up 1. They find themselves down 1 with 19 seconds to go.
Yeah.
Timeout, no advance. Buzumbru drives, blocked by Green. They managed to get the ball back. Wang with a long 3 on the buzzer, falls short.
But again, you know, I don't know what the play was.
No,
because you know, I don't understand why. I feel for Luke Buzumbru.
Yeah,
I think he can play. I'm sure he can play. He's in a bad situation insofar as he's been asked to do things, and I'm not quite sure. Basically, Manchester denied everybody and said, "Come on, Luke, make a play." He wasn't ready to do that because that's not his game. He's a slasher. He's a guy who attacks the rim off the catch generally. He's not a guy who surveys the defense and picks at the moment. And Taj Green was just waiting for him. Made a good play. And then, so you end up with Wang, who's like a 24% three-point shooter, shooting the ball from, 27 feet. It's a horrible shot. It was a Hail Mary shot. And the basketball gods don't reward that. I don't know why Wang didn't have the ball at the end. A screen and roll for him. I don't know what the play was. I don't understand. To be honest, I'm not sure why Bazumbu was in the game unless they literally had nobody else. Because he hasn't been put in that position ever. You know, and he just turned the ball over on the 8
seconds. He hasn't played. He's could literally come back 24 hours earlier.
Taylor would have done it last week, but Taylor's not there. Lawrence should be there, but Lawrence is on the bench. You know, and so you're just basically setting the guy up. Well, the guy's being set up to fail, from my perspective. And on top of that, you have to understand how the other players impact things. His head is spinning, right? He's got an 8-second call. He's then got Fletcher basically dancing on him and scoring. And suddenly everybody's kind of walking out the way and say, "Oh, over to you. Look, you win the game for us." It's not right. You know? So I thought they butchered it. I thought they absolutely, you know, I thought they found a way to lose the game.
Yeah.
Credit to Manchester who found a way to win it, of course. You know, there's always two sides of the coin. But that was, you know, that might be for me the moment that the Surrey kind of ship kind of is now taking in so much water that it is unsalvageable. You know, to Mary Rose, you know, it's on its way at the bottom. I don't know how they come back from that. I just don't. You know, I think it would be, you know, just a gutting loss. And a loss which drains belief out of everybody. Now, against that, they got Teo back, so maybe they get something out of Teo, but it's a lot more than that. It's going to be about diving on the floor. It's going to be about taking responsibility. It's going to be about who's going to be saying, I'm not going to be the one that's going to let us lose. And at this point in time, I don't know who the man is for Surrey. I don't know if you do.
No.
No. You know, I don't know who the man is. And, you know, and it's too far down the line, you know, for that to be the case.
Johnson, 7 of 10 shooting, 21 points and 13 rebounds. Ray had 16.7 rebounds, 8 assists. Wang, 13 points and 5 assists. Green, as you said earlier, 29 points. Fletcher, 23 points and 9 assists. Didn't look up how many times he's had 9 assists. I suspect it's a lot.
No, it's just
Dirk Williams had 14 points and 7 rebounds. They shot 11 of 21 from the free throw line and 11 of 29 from the 3-point line.
Yeah.
Random. Let's come to today's games and start in Plymouth. Plymouth City Patriots 79, London Lions 88. Decker, Oni, Herban not active. That was the word I was looking for. Kufos dressed but didn't play. So Sharma and Josh Ward-Hibbett into the starters, and PJ starting Jules Dang Akodo for Plymouth. It was a bit of a scrappy start, this one.
It was, but London were really after the Lord Mayor's show, weren't they? I mean, it's a trip down to Plymouth. It's dark. The environment is different. It's a hard floor. They really came out lethargic, I thought. And Zubcic kind of took a while to get into it, and they start Sharma and starting Ward-Hibbett. Obviously, start Ward-Hibbett instead of Decker. That does kind of change a lot of what you do, you know, because Ward-Hibbett is an offensive rebounder and an energy guy, and Decker's the guy who spaces the court and attacks off the dribble and gives you your 80% shooting inside the key, you know. So there is a bit of an adjustment on that. And I thought, you know, Jordan Taylor really never got really into the game either as a point guard. And Plymouth were playing harder because they're just giving up 108 points at home. So you're entitled to say, you know, what the X is going on. You're going to have to play a bit harder. And in lieu of that, he put Hawthorne, who plays very, very hard anyway, put him in the starting lineup and started the 3 guards. Took Daniels out the starting lineup, started the 3 guards, and Hassan took Brandon out the starting lineup. So it gives them kind of a bit of scoring coming off the bench. Which I think was a need for them as well. So yeah, the first half was noticeable only for the kind of the slightly more the ever more expressive Luke Nelson faces on being called for a foul.
Yeah.
You know, there's not many he sees as fouls, to be fair.
No.
There was a couple of them which were certainly one I around, which was pretty inconsequential in a European context, I think you would say.
Yeah.
You know, so there's that. And then and noticeable also because it's about the 3rd or 4th game that Mo Solowade has actually in BBL has actually come
Yeah.
in and knocked down shots. He can't
Yeah,
knock down
yeah,
a shot for it to save his life in Europe. But
yeah,
in BBL, like he's kind of the second unit. He's coming in, he's just knocking down shots like it's going out of fashion.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, I think 3 or 4 threes, didn't he, around the
Yeah,
quarter?
he
And
did
that
three.
broke the
Yeah,
game
yeah, yeah.
open.
So actually, I thought Plymouth. It was quite easy to go. I was 16-16 at the end of the first quarter. They'd done quite well, but given how poorly London had shot, I thought they probably would have wanted a bit of a
Yeah.
lead there, Plymouth, at the end of the first quarter. And then what happens? They start making shots in the second quarter. They scored the first 9 points of the second quarter, and they're out to 16-25. Patriots didn't make a three in the first half. They were 0 for 10. And then at the start of the second half, you get a Sharma alley-oop on the opening play. You get 3 Zubcic three-pointers. You get a Taylor three-pointer. It's 14-1 in 2.5 minutes, less than 2.5 minutes, and they're 33-57
Yeah,
and
it's also the
cruising.
defense because the defense doesn't change, and eventually they get some runs going off their defense. They can run off it
Yeah,
and get and that kind of becomes a calling card for me when their offense isn't great. It's why Ryan Schmidt's be able to get away with sitting so many guys down because the defense is pretty consistent.
mm.
And you'd say they're 0 of 10, but from 3, but you have to match that against your Leicester or 4 or 12. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
they're playing.
yeah.
This is about defense. It's not about teams just London walking in the building and teams not being able to shoot. It's about the way that they're playing and the way that they're ratcheting that up and not giving up any open looks to people on the wing. Yeah, and then the talent's going to come to play, isn't it? Let's be honest. And then we all know that once London's had one run in the
Yeah,
game, in a BBL game so far since November, every time they've had one meaningful run, they've got themselves out of 12 or 14. That's been the
yeah,
game.
yeah, yeah,
That has been the game. Doesn't matter how. And Plymouth came back a little bit, and Plymouth put a bit of running on there.
Daniels made their first 2 3-pointers of the game. They'd been 0 for 12 at that point, and then had a 12-1 run and got it to 64-70. They did get to 4 points at one stage, but Zubcic just made sure they didn't have any ideas of winning the game. Just put it away.
Yeah, there is. I mean, the bench was more productive with Brandon coming off it, and also Bell. Probably a bit chasing to have been benched, so he's come off the bench and played with a lot of energy and given them something. PG is going to do well to fashion that many wins out of that team. With the stage that they're at now, with having those 2 new guys in there and having to kind of balance, everything that's going on with that in this league, because this league is now, other than Surrey, who I'm kind of despairing at, this league is a tough out for everybody to get a win. And that's, everybody apart from London. So he's going to struggle. He's going to have to try and find a way of manufacturing some defense out of them. Because even in the first half, I kind of got the impression it was London not being in the first. I didn't watch much of the second half, but in the first half, I kind of got the impression it was London being sloppy. Just missed a couple of layups. Sharma missed one. I thought they were being a bit sloppy as opposed to Plymouth really shutting them down. But then again, they're athletically disadvantaged all over the court, so it's not a criticism really. It's just reality of life.
Yeah. So as I say, Zubcic made free throws down the stretch after 5 points had pushed them back out to 9 points. Hassan, 11 of 17 for 25 points. That's a pretty good weekend for him, efficiency-wise. Dan, hey?
Touches it in the paint and he scores.
Yeah.
That's been ever thus.
Less so efficient the other 2 top scorers that they had. Daniels 4 of 13 for 16 points and 7 rebounds. Gadsden 15 points off 2 of 9. 2 of 9. That must be 3-pointers, is it? Can't be 2 of 9. I must have written that down wrong. 3 of 17. They finished from 3-point range. Zubcic with 21 points, 5 rebounds, 8 assists. Shalawati 5 of 6 from 3-point range for 15 points. 11 and 8 for Ovi Soka. They missed 11 free throws as well, London, 19 of 30. So let's go to Glasgow, where the Caledonia Gladiators beat the Sheffield Sharks 77 to 70. Tape picking up where he left off on Friday, 5 quick points. They were out to 7-0. Sheffield struggling to score. Al Durham with the last 6 points of the first quarter, and they had a double-figure lead. Caledonia.
Yeah, Sheffield, just trying to find themselves. And you know, their season's really been an interesting one, because if you look at kind of how it's gone, you kind of understand how they are where they're at. In relation to the decisions that they've made, they're all understandable decisions. But where it's left them at is kind of at a bit of a disadvantage. And what I mean by that is, you know, they start off 0-4, but it's early. They've had a decent pre-season. It's early. You're 0-4. You want to ride it out a little bit. See where you're at.
And they've played some good teams in that.
Played some good teams. You weren't awful.
Yeah.
Then they go 7-2 the next, and they beat London. Right, which is, you know, hang on, we've got something going here. We just beat London. You know, whatever the circumstances, you beat London.
Yeah.
At that point, they're thinking, actually, no, we're good here. We're trending upwards, you know. And then they lose like 5 on the trot before Christmas, and so they suddenly end up being like, you know, 7-9, 7-10, and it's like, how do we get here? You know, oh dear, actually, there's a problem here, and so then they replace 2 guys. So that's the decision. That's the decision. They thought, we can't ride this anymore. So that the 2 guys they replaced are understandable. They replace the Americans who aren't kind of the central guys, Oganyemi and Banks. They bring in 2 guys who can clear. They also play, but now you've got that whole thing about introducing 2 players, one of whom's a point guard, in the middle of a season, which means you're behind the 8 ball against teams that haven't done that. And that's what they're fighting with at the moment. And the only team they've beaten since is obviously Plymouth, who themselves have replaced 2 guys with 2 guys.
Yeah.
So they're now like 1-9 in the last 10, and again, it's just, this league is, you know, really tough insofar as, you know, if you're losing games by 8 or 10 points, it doesn't mean you're a bad team.
No.
But it does mean that you're 8 or 10 points short, and those 8 or 10 points is that continuity and that understanding, and also the ability of the coach for knowing his own players and knowing his own team and knowing his own combinations. So you add 2 more guys in to different combinations, you've suddenly got a whole, you know, 50 or 60 new combinations to play with. And that's tough. And it's different to doing it with 1. And that's what Caledonia have done now. Harry Hodges doesn't really count, because Harry Hodges is a centre. And introducing a centre for a centre isn't that as much of a problem, because basically he's just taking Fraser's minutes. He's a little bit different in the way that he plays, but he's smart enough to not to change much, if that makes any sense. And Durham as the guard, well, they play guards off the ball. They play in a systematic way, and he's stepped up and made some plays. So there's been less disruption on their part. Sheffield, it's just like, you know, they're gonna have to find a way of scoring 75 points.
Yeah.
Or 80.
So they had a good start to the second quarter, 10-2 run. Bearing in mind they only scored 10 points in the entire first quarter. They had 10 in 3 minutes to cut it back. Ramsey and Flowers both hit threes, cut it back to 24-20. Durham, by the way, had 3 fouls just before halftime, and he had 10 points at that stage. And then Sheffield had the first 5 points of the third quarter, get it down to 2 points, 40-38. But then 8 points from Durham pushed it back out to 59-50. And to your point, it didn't quite look like Sheffield were ever going to have enough offense to get it back. And in the end, they scored the last 7 points of the game to make it 7.
71, yeah. And Kieran was saying, I think Kieran was kind of frustrated almost with that lack of energy, the lack of intensity, and trying to find a way of kind of bridging that gap, the lack of desperation, as it were. And again, the team was he got his frustration technical, and he was trying to find guys who he needs. So, you know, Flowers came in, out. Glasgow came in, Glasgow came out. Ramsey had, you know, showed an ability to score to a certain degree without being really the ability to be the guy who kind of takes over. And Routinho was more impactful. He was a little bit more positive in the way that he played, you know, in the fourth quarter in particular. But they don't get much in transition. They really don't, you know, and in the BBL, that really hurts. You know, cheap points are really critical, and they're not getting many cheap points at the moment. And Caledonia basically kept them at arm's length throughout the game, and justified. Durham has helped them because he's like a cross between Adams, the guy the first had, and then Burns, the guy the second had. Adams was the basically standstill jump shooter, big guy, could score 6'5", but definite 2 guard. In BBL terms, probably a 3. Burns was a flat out scoring point guard, jacking it up from anywhere. Durham's kind of a bit in between. He plays in the wing. He waits to see what develops. If somebody isn't in the help side, he'll attack and get to the rim. If he's got a screen, if there's going to be a screen and roll, he'll curl to the middle and shoot his 15-foot jump shot, and he'll also space the court and knock down the shot. So his offense is less forced, and it's less forced than Burns, and it's more flexible than Adams. So that kind of fits Gareth a little more. Look, and sometimes for fans bemoaning changes, etc. Sometimes changes make you better.
Yeah.
They really do. It's all about the fit of the player and the mentality of the player. And because the idea that if someone's there long enough, they will get better, it doesn't always work. As a coach, you kind of know after about 6 to 8 weeks. You kind of know, because you see everything. You don't just have the information of the games. You have the information of the practices. You have the information of the way that they talk to people around the club. They have the information about, what kind of state the flat's in, all that type of stuff, and there's so much that you don't know. So, the idea that, that change is bad is not necessarily the thing. You keep changing, you change until you get what you think is a workable unit, which is going to give you the best chance to win games down the end. And the reality is, whilst the season seems like it's been going on forever, particularly for all of those of us who've watched every bloody game, we're still. It's been going 5 months, but some teams have only just reached halfway in their game.
Yeah.
So most of your games play at the end, so you've got to be playing better at the end than you are at the beginning. So Sheffield, they won in 9 out of the last 10. They got to find a way to score in the ball, and they're gonna have to commit to a style, I think. I'm not convinced that at the moment they're a mix and match. The Flowers at one side, playing the 4 Nichols, Routinho. I think I would probably see ins and outs, but my mentality was always, things you're struggling to score, get smaller, play smaller. Play with Routinho at the 4 a bit more. Routinho and Nichols. Maybe Flowers at the 5. That may take Cook and Delpesh out of it a little bit. Then you've got to decide whether Flowers is worth persevering with in relation to that, or are you going to play him? Or is he going to be a 4? Who are you going to play to shoot the ball? They still got decisions to make on personnel. And that's not a great place to be in February.
The first time that the Rock/Gladiators have beaten Sheffield 4 times in the same season, and the first time they've beaten them 5 times in a row.
Here's the thing, right? What Gladiators? 11 and 10, yeah.
They are 11 and 10, yes.
Sheffield, 7 and 14?
8 and 15.
8 and 15, right? So, those 4 wins, if they're reversed, Gladiators are 7 and 14.
Yeah.
And Sheffield are 12 and 11.
Yeah.
And the whole
narrative changes.
Narrative of the season changes. It's totally different. So some teams, a team just has a wood on another team, and that's the way it is. But when you think of it like that, that's a
They won't play them again.
I think they'll be happy.
They actually no. Wait, did they play in one of the knockout contests? Maybe there is one more. Might be one more game. Durham with 7 of 10 shooting for 19 points and 5 rebounds. Sloan 13 points and 6 assists. Bailey 12 points, although neither of them quite as efficient as Durham. 4 of 12 shooting, both of them.
Yeah, but they're calmer though. Sloan looks like he understands it now. He's getting it. He's not. Yeah. He's not the kind of the Jack Rabbit who was putting up 32 shots in a game at Bristol. He's Gareth gradually molding them into what he wants them to be.
Ramsey 23, Routinho 13, Nelson and Cook both had 11. Let's go to the final game of this evening. Cheshire Phoenix 82, Newcastle Eagles 70. Amaury Archibald, obviously not registered yet, but he is in the country because he did an interview at halftime. Nick's getting some early steals out. He was obviously in for Lloyd Daniels, who broke his hand. I can't remember if we said that before. Nick's getting some early steals out in transition, led 12-4 after 4 minutes, playing how they play at home every week, basically.
Well, they'll play against a team that wasn't ready to play.
Well,
I hear what you're saying, and then they did, and then they dominated from the beginning and the get-go, and they played with the 5 out, and Will Neighbour was able to get the ball in the post, and then Larry Austin was able to get to the rim, and Newcastle's defense was execrable basically early on. It was awful. They weren't ready to play. Gordon for the second game in a row basically didn't show up until the second half. Kyle Johnson was just not connected. Got 2 early fouls. The only guy who was ready to play from my perspective was French. And then he picked up his second foul on probably a 60-40 call, probably the right call. But the only reason he picked it up was because Hamlet flew out and tried to block a Larry Austin 3-point shot. Just nuts. You don't, and give Larry Austin a lane in the basket, and the Sam French comes over and tries to take a charge. 50-50 call, didn't get it, 2 fouls, he sits on the bench. And when after he sat on the bench, the wheels just absolutely fell off. And Cheshire did exactly what they're meant to do. When the wheels were falling off, they took a screwdriver and they made sure they unlocked as many of the bolts as they could.
Yeah.
And then
Newcastle not helped by 3 minutes around the first quarter break. 1 minute to go before the end of the first quarter. Mockford hits the three, lands on Ocharobia for an and-one, but turned his ankle. And
well, here's me. I'm going to come on to this stuff now because he did that, and then there was some other stuff that happened as well later. I watched that back. I thought it was a bad play. I thought that Ocharobia didn't make one movement towards Mockford. I thought he made 2 movements towards Mockford. I thought he stepped underneath him. I thought in the NBA you get thrown out for that. It's the Zaza Pachulia rule.
Yeah.
You stand to do that. And I don't know whether he did it or not, but I thought it looked to me.
EuroLeague, they call that unsportsmanlike.
Yes, well, that's what I was saying. I think I don't think you get thrown out for it in the BBL, but I think it's unsportsmanlike foul. I just think it's a dangerous play. He's a shooter. He's shooting the ball. You go up and you took 2 steps to close him out, and you made sure your foot is stuck right there, and he lands on it, and he's out of the game. And so I thought the refs bottled that one. They blew that. I don't think they understood what had happened. And already they've quite properly already given Defoe a flop warning when he went down far too easy under Ocharobia.
Yeah.
And then, so that happens. And then early in the second quarter, Cohen goes up, shoots a 3 in the corner. Austin basically again takes his space away. Cohen falls over, and for I watched it back, so I'm not just saying this out of emotion, but you've just had a guy who's, basically maybe out for 3 or 4 weeks because somebody's gone right under them and stood on his foot. And then Cohen goes up, comes down, and he gets a flop technical. So I just thought it was an appalling decision. I watched it back. There's just no way from that angle. As a referee, you can see where the feet's gone, where he's meant to be landing. You just can't. And against the background of what had happened to Mockford earlier, and may well be a genuine concern from Cohen that if I land on somebody's foot, the same thing could happen to me.
Yeah,
I call that as a technical was just nuts. But that's not impacted by, and I said that at the time, that wasn't impacted by what subsequently happened.
Yeah,
it was a bad call at the time, right? And that, and I've got a big thing with refs being more interested in calling flops than actually watching the game and actually calling what happened. There was one on the Friday night at Newcastle, where Darius kicked out. Darius kicked out on a jump shot, and the ref was doing that so much that none of them saw who the ball.
Nobody knew what his possession was.
A jump ball, and it's like can this is not all these are not the things which we need to be overly fussing ourselves about. Nobody else cares, right? So. And that's actually, and it's interesting, the unsportsmanlike thing, because coming off the game you guys did on Friday night on the telly, there was a weird unsportsmanlike call in that claim as well. Which Ro couldn't see and I couldn't see. And then there was one in transition later on.
I thought there were 3 unsportsmanlike question mark.
The one that Callum got him on. Got him on. I thought that was a good call because if you look at where he comes down very close to the ball and then he kind of moves up the arm.
He's the last man though.
Doesn't matter. It was in shooting motion.
Oh, right. Sorry, that one. Yeah, sorry. I thought you meant the transition.
No, the transition one, he wasn't actually the last man. There was another man. If you go back, there was another man actually under the basket, kind of playing him on side on the left wing, as it were. But it was a transition. The transition foul. He's a foot in front of him. He put his hand in his back. He pushed him over. I mean, it's as unsportsmanlike as you're ever going to get, whether he's the last man or not. And actually, there was another one in the Plymouth London game today, which they called unsportsmanlike, which they shouldn't have called unsportsmanlike.
The Ovi one. The Ovi one where Ovi takes his arm. That one.
No, it was in the first half. It was I think Luke Nelson got a steal at the top, or someone got a steal at the top.
Oh yeah.
And it was called the last man and sportsmanlike.
Brandon.
Yeah, but he was in front of him. You know, it's got to be from the side or from behind, and he was in front. So so some of the unsportsmanlike and otherwise calls this week have been pretty random, I would suggest, to be kind. And certainly the game that you guys did, the one that the one that was called in that game when Dirk is going to the basket, which I can only think Josh he's seen him maybe undercutting from behind.
Yeah.
But to call that and not to call somebody who sticks his foot underneath the 3-point shooter is to me very difficult.
Well, the other one was in the Plymouth game where they called the Ovi one in the first quarter, but then didn't call one on Dusha in the I can't remember if it was third or fourth quarter. That even Paul Nicholson was going, oh, I think that might be an unsportsmanlike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we get to that with so Cohen gets that.
Yeah. And then a minute later.
Early in the second quarter, again, 50-50 call, probably a block. Probably Austin puts his head down.
Yeah.
Probably a block, I think. He knocked him backwards. Cohen in frustration. No doubt. He slaps the floor.
The floor, yeah.
Now that doesn't mean that he's in frustration at the ref. It doesn't mean he thinks the ref's made an awful call. It means he's given the ref an opportunity to make a call.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And of course, again, the referees who don't want to turn their head and don't want to do it, who just don't seem to have the ability to look away and understand it's a game with a great deal of emotion being played, whereby players can be frustrated, players are allowed to have emotion, decides, oh no, that's so much, that is whatever they call it, visual dissent, banging.
Visual dissent.
You don't know it's visual dissent. It could be frustration. It could just be frustrated with the fact that he hasn't got his feet to where he meant to be. So because of that, and knowing what's happened a minute ago, we have an absolute failure of communication, absolute failure of discretion in relation to the game, just like with Legend Robertson and his arms up in the air.
Yeah. So my take on that, and I watched the flop technical back a couple of times just to be sure, and I wasn't quite sure, and I'm always a bit hesitant on the ones where it's a shooter because of what you just said, but the slapping the floor, as soon as he did that, he's out the game.
Yeah.
Before the referee blew the whistle, as soon as he did it, I just went, he's out the game.
Yeah.
Because to me, he looked at the referee to see which way it went, because again, as you say, it was close, but I think it was blocking. I agree with you. I think it was blocking foul. And to me, that was visual dissent. So I'd have teed him up for that.
I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I'm in this. That this is what doesn't matter what vest he's got on.
Yeah.
I think the whole visual dissent stuff is just nonsense. I said that to you before.
Yeah. No, I don't dispute that point of view. But given that it's there, I would tee him up for that.
Well, it's there. It's there how it's interpreted. I mean, as I say, it's all down to interpretation. If you undercut somebody, it's unsportsmanlike foul. But they don't call that.
Yeah.
We've just talked about all the unsportsmanlike fouls that they haven't called.
Yeah.
What I'm asking for, and I've been around refs who would do that, and refs who won't, and refs who would choose what to say and choose not what to say, because ultimately, the game is about the players. It's not about the referees. That would be absolutely, and you have to understand the emotions of the players. Now, if you get into a referee's face and you clap, you communicate, or if you lay a finger on them, or you do anything of that nature, and you actually draw attention to yourself whilst you're doing it, then you get a technical foul. I've never had a problem with that at all. But referees are so, as I say, at this point in time, we've got to this point whereby everybody's really keen to work out who's trying to cheat, who's trying to fall over, who's committing the flop, who's showing us a bit of dissent, who's waving from the crowd, all of that stuff. I just want them to referee the game. You call a block, you walk to the table, you signal the block. If he chases after you and gets into your face and the whole crowd sees it, that's fine. You tee him up. But you don't know what his motivation is, just as if, when he does what he does. You don't know. You can't say that he's not frustrated with himself. Might not look like that.
Yeah.
As a ref, you can't say that. You don't know.
Yeah.
Right. Now, what Cohen did, which was his mistake, was he gave the ref a call to make.
Yeah.
Right. And I absolutely, and it comes with the frustration of the game that plays.
Yeah.
All of that stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm not giving him a pass.
No, because he's also got to know I'm on a technical foul from 1 minute ago, and
Yeah,
if I
which
slap the floor here, the referee might
yeah,
interpret
but
it.
players will, will be thinking, hang on a minute, I mean, if you saw the sort of look on his face when he got that technical foul, this is an emotional game, and
Yeah,
players
no,
do this
I'm not.
thing, and this is why, as I say, these are different referees every single time. It's almost like they're taking the turn to peg people for their own. I'm going to do you for a flop. I'm going to have this flop. Right, I'll have this technical, and it just needs it's tough because it's hard because I'm really trying to separate the fact it's my guys, and I don't know David. I've never spoken to him in my life, right? So it's my team. So I'm trying to separate that out. But I've always had this visceral annoyance with technicals which are given out in the immediate aftermath of contested plays.
Yeah,
where players are fighting for position.
Yeah,
They're involved in a physical battle. He's just been knocked over to the floor. He's been called a foul on him. 2 minutes ago, he thought he'd been knocked over the floor. He got a technical for that.
Yeah.
Right. And
because it's also that thing of so actually what, like, was it Best today who ran off the court?
Yeah.
And it's sort of like, well, is that visual dissent because he ran off the court, or is that just, oh, I can't, I've made a mistake and I've run off the court or something? I don't
exactly.
know.
But you don't know, and if you don't know, you walk past it and you ignore
Yeah.
it. And as a referee, and that's always
all of that. I'd have still given him a T for slapping the floor personally, but
What happens if you're slapping the floor when you're playing defense, Dan?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that, if I'm honest
No, I'm
with
not
you.
either. But is that
No,
technical?
but
No,
no, it's not a
the
technical because it's a mano saying I'm going to.
Yeah, exactly. It's not in response. It's not in response to a call. That ref does not know that he has done that to signal dissatisfaction with a call.
Yeah,
You
I
don't
agree
know
with
that.
that,
I
but
don't know that.
I don't know
You
it, but
assume
that's
that.
what it looked like. We'll move on from that. I think we've made the point. Evans had 2 3-pointers and 8 of a 13-point run to go 34-13 ahead. That was also part of the frustration, I should imagine, because that was the point at which that Cohen got ejected. And then it just seemed like a procession, to be honest with you, at that point. And it's 60-32, a minute into the third quarter. It didn't look like Newcastle were going to have the response that they had. Yeah,
Newcastle's defense was awful.
Yeah.
They can't do enough about their interest in the game. That's the outside of French to a certain degree, and Defoe, who took it a bit personally. And then we had the flop call at the other end, and we didn't know if it was a flop or a block and all sorts of stuff, going on the other end as well, as they were trying to even things out and make things right, and it was just badly managed. But Newcastle, none of that has to do with the fact that Cheshire absolutely beat their brains out for 2.5 quarters. Now, the one positive thing for Newcastle was that obviously they're still listening to their coach, because they came out and played hard in the third quarter.
Yeah.
So and that was just indicative of just how soft they played in the first two.
Yeah. So down 28, they had runs of 10-0 and 9-0, led by Gordon, Hamlet, and Johnson, and they won the third quarter 23-7, and were down to 10, 65-55. And you were thinking, oh, here's an opportunity, but Austin and Evans kind of killed that momentum, and actually Newcastle never even got it into single figures in the fourth quarter.
No, they got close, but they made some bad mistakes. There's a couple of times Ubiaro had the ball on the fast break and he threw it away, and he didn't throw it to his point guard, Hamlet, who was going down the court, and who he needs to get the ball to. French missed a layup or two. They kept driving into the lane, hoping for a foul call, and the refs had swallowed the whistles by this point. You have the guy who's shot the most foul shots in the league, who didn't shoot one in this game, and he was attacking. So they've swallowed their whistles by this point because they just want to get out of the building. And Newcastle didn't finish enough plays. Now, what happened was the increased physicality, and the fact that they'd swallowed their whistles meant that they were able to play some. But it was a pretty ugly second half. And in relation to defense, as you say, Newcastle held Cheshire to 7, in the third quarter, and their defense was good. Cheshire probably didn't get a couple of calls that they could have got, as I say. And game kind of moved on, but then, as you say, Evans kind of put the game away. And, Evans and Austin, they had 50 points in this game on, on 16 or 23 shooting or something like that, and that was ultimately the difference in the game. They also got the foul line 12 times, and Newcastle's guards didn't get the foul line at all, which was another difference in the game. But, you don't spot a team 26 points on the road and expect to win. The fact that it was a kind of an acceptable second half effort from Newcastle, doesn't impact the fact that they were totally bereft of the appropriate level of effort and intensity in the first half. Your pro players, you got to be ready to play every time you come on the court, and just because you've won a game and you're feeling good about yourself doesn't mean that you can turn the intensity down and the defense down, and you give up 60 points to a team in a half and then you hold them to 7 in the third quarter. That's maybe a little bit about Cheshire, but that's primarily about your effort and intensity. And it wasn't there. So Cheshire deserved to win the game. They're a solid team, as I say. I'm unimpressed. I think with both with 2 of the 3 teams, I was very unimpressed.
Austin 25 points off 13 shots, 5 rebounds, 6 assists. Evans 8 of 10 shooting for 21 points. Neighbor 11 and 6. Gordon with 15. Hamlet 13 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and French and Johnson both had 10 points. So quickly through the table before we finish. London 17 wins and 2 defeats for their 19, which is the fewest number of games of anybody in the league. 4 fewer than Bristol, who also have 17 wins and 6 defeats. Leicester 14 and 6. Cheshire now 12 and 11 in 4th. Caledonia and Manchester just behind them, both 11 and 10. And then Plymouth are 8 and 13. Sheffield 8 and 15. Newcastle 6 and 14, just closing the gap there. And 2 and 19. Surrey at the bottom of the standings.
Yeah, we got 4 tranches. We got London, and we got Leicester and Bristol. Then we got the 3 in the middle. Then we got the 4 at the bottom, and Surrey are basically becoming a bit
marooned.
So realistically, you're looking at the bottom, the Plymouth, Sheffield, Newcastle at the moment, playing for the 7th and 8th spots. That's the way we're looking. It could change a little bit, but you don't see Manchester, Caledonia, or Cheshire plummeting. The point of dropping 4 or 5 games in 15 for any of those teams to catch up. That's probably gone now. So that's where we're at. It's still interesting. Interesting league, and there's lots of stuff going on. But
yeah. So Dave and I will be back next Sunday night to do it all over again. So have a great week, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.